Hi, everybody. Joshua Angela here. We're doing this again since we had no audio on over the last 5 minutes. So I'm Joshua. This is Matthew, as always. And we also have a special guest, my youngest brother, Stevie, here. He's up on the Discord. Go ahead and say hi.
Hi.
Hey, awesome. So yeah, for everybody that's new, this is the 11th Hour Hero podcast. I've been working on this multiplayer game for a little bit of time now, and continue working on it. It's a multiplayer roguelike where you and your friends, you got to board the spaceship, find the boss, and beat the boss all in 1 hour before everything explodes. And so you got to go in, got to find different weapons, different abilities, and try to figure out what role you play within your team to really try to figure out how to like take down this boss. With the whole design that it'll take like a few times to try to like figure out like how we actually play the game. So yeah, I'm actively working on it. Really excited to be here to talk about the game.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, we can get into the topic. So you've been working hard on a demo, trying to get a demo ready for your birthday, which is tomorrow. So happy early birthday. So what? How was the progress this week?
Yeah, progress I think has been pretty good. So just as a recap from last episode, from last week, the idea, I really want to try to hone in on this it factor thing, where you're going in, you're like you walk into this room, find this experiment that's like halfway done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like you have all these test tubes around this machine, and you see that's like okay, like you know this ultimate weapon is like almost ready. You just need to hit the start button, kind of thing, right? So you could choose to press that button, and that would release all these different enemies like around the level. But you'd also get the super powerful gun that could help you out with the boss. And so this is like this would be like a good experiment to see like okay, like how does decisions you make within the game affect not just yourself but your team as you go explore and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the original idea, and I went into this thing being like, okay, this is a pretty small thing that I can just like develop pretty quickly, right? But I'm a software engineer. I should have known that small things can balloon and escalate, and boy did this one balloon up. So basically, what I didn't realize is that this is the first enemy that I've introduced into the procedurally generated level part.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is, logic wise, for player deaths when people die, I had always assumed that that would happen like at the boss level, right? And so it's pretty easy. Like once you die in the arena, nothing really happens to you at that point. But once everybody dies in the arena, then everybody respawns back into the original lobby. But now that you can actually die in the generated level, like it kind of like throws off that whole logic where you basically get respawned in the lobby instead of back at the procedurally generated level part. So then
Mm-hmm.
you'd have it where like people will try to like reload the whole level kind of thing before they spawn back in, and that kind of like wrecks how people, for people that are already in the game, like how that works kind of thing, right?
Gotcha.
And so there's like so I had to solve that bit of logic for like being able to respawn. But now like I had to figure out how to respawn within the procedurally generated level. Maybe even just like okay, like in Halo you would have it where like you kind of like fall to the ground, you die, and then you have to wait for your teammates to get out of danger in order to respawn. And right now I'm just trying to do like the simplest thing, which is just okay, we just have you respawn at the very start of the level, essentially.
Okay.
But then it's like, okay, like how much delay time to respawn? Like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, kind of thing, right? Then what happens when you die? Like, do you, so I have it now where you drop all your abilities and you drop your gun when you die. But you can
Okay.
still freely move around for the 5 seconds. So
Okay.
there's still like a lot of things to do when it comes to like actually applying like the death things in this game. And it's one of those things where I'm like I'm like, this is not the problem I wanted to solve when going for this idea kind of thing, right? um and so so there was that one problem. There's also like these enemies. So this is you've played a maritime arena. Stevie here has also played a maritime arena, and in that game, like all the enemies are like floating around. They don't
Yeah.
have like any legs, and the reason why I had that was because I didn't want to deal with all these different animations that could happen with enemies.
Yeah.
So this enemy that I've introduced, I'm pretty proud that I actually did manage to actually get a good looking enemy in there. I didn't model it, but I bought this model from the asset store. It looks pretty creepy.
Hmm.
And I got these free animations from Mixamo.com. And so it's like I'm using these like zombie type animations where people like they do like a slow walk, right? But when they see you, and if you're like a further distance away, they go into like a crawling animation and they chase you down. So it's actually kind of like pretty fun to actually just kind of like maneuver around those enemies.
Okay.
But so the challenge is like making sure that these animations actually look good, and
Yeah.
the animations look good, but with the way to have these enemies move around in the level, like the walking stepping is not tied well with the navigation. So what happens is you actually have a lot of sliding, and so the enemies like they look like they slide around a lot in this game, which is I don't know. Like right now, that's okay.
Hmm.
But I think I definitely would like a second pass at these things just to make sure that it like actually looks good in that one. I know it's a little bit hard to describe a little
Yeah.
bit. I know you basically just have to picture it.
Well, yeah.
But hopefully for the listeners that are only listening into this, they get a little bit of idea.
Yeah. And you have a build of your demo right now on itch, right?
Yes.
Maybe not the most recent thing that you're working on with maybe working on some of these animations, but you have a build there, so other people can always check it out there if they
Yep.
want to see how it is.
Yep, exactly. And so all the enemy stuff, right now, I don't have it up on itch, but I do plan to have it up there soon.
Hmm.
TBD.
Yeah.
It might be maybe I have that up there before my birthday, or maybe I have it like right after my birthday. And
Gotcha.
so it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm glad that I shipped the game like last week. And I did that because I need to start like actually like being on the being able to like ship consistently, right? And like the idea is that I could just ship every Friday, which is usually in a software engineering, that's like a no go because you don't want to be fixing bugs over the weekend, right? But this is
Yeah.
like all still kind of like for fun anyway. I don't think it's that big of a deal to ship on Friday, and then it's
Yeah.
like have it where I would actually rather ship on Friday so that way more people can play over the weekend and I get to see like what everybody's like thoughts are at that point.
Yeah.
And then I have a whole entire week to like work on like more adjustments and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense I'd actually kind of prefer Fridays for now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's any build out is like critical. You need to be monitoring it right now, like in that
Yeah,
sense of
like
if it doesn't work very well. I mean, it's just 2 days. You don't have data, so
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is like I'm just trying to embrace the jank kind of thing, right? Like
yeah,
things are going to be really wonky. Things are not going to be like officially done for quite a while. So like this is just like we just gotta and jank can be fun. I'm really trying to focus on the fun aspect of things first and foremost.
okay. And so going back to this scene that you're trying to put in, you kind of you started talking about the enemy that you put in. Can you set the scene a little bit more about like this decision the player has to make? Were you able to get everything you wanted to get in terms of like the weapon, the button, kind of like anything about that scene making it powerful?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah, straight up. I spent the whole entire week making sure that the enemies could work like over the network.
Okay.
And so that included animations for the idle walking, well, for idle, for walking, for sprinting, for attacking, for dying, like
Okay.
and making sure that all those animations worked on both the server and the client side, making sure that both the server and or the host and the client can also attack and defeat the enemy
Okay.
as well, and making sure that the when the enemy walks from one room to another, right, that also matches from client and host.
Okay.
Also, making sure that so one thing that's actually kind of interesting is that when the enemy sees you, if you're like if it's like Pokemon, right, like if they see you, they'll like run right to you, kind of thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And but they will also not, like, if you die, they will still try to chase you. Like they will chase you after death.
Oh,
And
okay.
not only that, but when you respawn, they don't like try to actively look for anybody else. They'll just like hard target to you right now.
Okay.
So it's like really funny when you like die in one room, and then you respawn back in the starting room, and then all of a sudden you just see like these guys just like crawling straight to you
Yeah.
again. So like that's actually kind of creepy, and I think it'll be interesting to see how well that goes over at the party tomorrow.
Okay.
I think that might be something where, like, I think it actually adds in a little bit of a nice flair to things, even when it's still like very like rudimentary and basic a little bit.
Cool.
So yeah,
Wait, so
when
do you intend to keep it that way, or are you gonna change it to not be like that?
I'm definitely gonna change it so that way it's not like that. I do think like, or maybe one of those things where like maybe this enemy will actually just hard target to one player essentially. But maybe like other enemies I add in may like switch off different targets and stuff. Like you could change it up based off of like who's like has like low health or who's like aggravated the enemy, kind of thing, right? Like last.
It could be like it could be like Matthew knows, like the ghost girl in Lethal Company. It doesn't she work like that or something like that?
Yeah, I think she targets the person that's the most has like the lowest sanity, so whoever's like flicking the camera around the most. And then when she like targets one person, she'll only show up for that one person.
Oh, really?
And then I don't know how exactly she's like aggroed, but I think if like I know she's like a run killer because it's like once you see her, it's like you're on a timer essentially of like she will eventually just like go for you and you actually can't get away like because she can go through like walls and stuff. Um, so yeah, but yeah, your enemies will probably have a little bit more like counterplay, hopefully.
That could be a cool concept to play with, yeah.
Yeah, I think right now there's not a lot of like counterplay, like unless if you I mean, thankfully you have a bunch of like in Lethal Company, you barely have anything to defend yourself with. In this game, you actually have guns. So as long as
Yeah.
you just kill the enemy, you're fine. And since you respawn in the starting room anyway, I mean, it's not that hard to just sprint over, grab whatever you dropped, kind of thing, right? And just snipe the enemy. And then if you're just playing with multiple people too, like you can just well defend yourself like pretty well as a group.
Yeah.
So I think there's so we actually mentioned a lot there, and I think that like it's one of those things where I'm glad we're doing this podcast too, because I can always just like look back at this stuff and just take notes on whatever I say and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm like kind of like a scattered brain. I like kind of forget a lot of things as soon as I'm done talking here.
Yeah. Well, awesome.
Yeah. So I think going back to like, okay, like I didn't really get to during like that if factor like decision making thing. I feel like, I mean, the party thankfully isn't until like late tomorrow anyway, so I could probably just like like do some more work tonight, kind of thing, if that's even possible, because tonight is like kind of like a busy night. And then I can always like wake up early tomorrow too, kind of thing, right? If I really am just like, okay, let's like I get this version of the game up on itch. I have another version that's just a demo that is very just basic on that decision thing, right? Because I do think the hard part is done, which is just making sure that the enemy like actually just works and acts. Technically, that decision it's really just okay, if you press this button, enemies spawn. If you don't press it, then enemies don't spawn.
Yeah.
It's same thing with the gun, right? Everything else around it is just flare at that point, just to like set the atmosphere. But it sounds like I don't have a lot of time to set up that atmosphere quite yet. But if I can set up at least that decision thing, right, and have some sort of like action and consequence, I feel like that would be like good to have at the party and stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways it's like at the end of the day, did I like focus too hard on making sure that the enemy actually like worked like super well kind of thing, right? Who's to say? Nobody's here actually tried it out yet and stuff like that. So I feel like maybe next time for the next podcast, I'll make sure that you guys can actually like play a teeny tiny bit first before jumping up on here.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're talking about the action and consequence, you made the consequence. You just have to make the decision a little bit more.
Yeah.
Flesh that out basically.
Yeah. So I will say there is, when I'm trying to build this game, I'm trying to make it where it's, make it for multiple places kind of thing. Like we use like a bunch of code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did have like an idea of like for the boss, like having like another tack just be like have it like spawn like a bunch of enemies. I mean that's a pretty like common thing, right?
Yeah.
But we're in like a sand arena kind of thing, right? So it might be pretty cool to have it where like the boss like dives into the middle of the thing, brings up like a bunch of sand things, so it makes visibility hard to see.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's when I can like bring in these zombie enemies kind of thing, like raise them from the sand and just like have them chase down people and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's probably actually where like these enemies that I have walking around the arena, like in the level, like I might actually like technically remove that from the level because
Mm-hmm.
it might just be a little bit more atmosphere to have it be done in the boss arena at the end of the day. But this is like a one thing I am actually really, I mean, I'm a lot of things to be happy about, but one of the things is just the fact that like last year, one of my pre-qualifications for making sure that this game was actually viable was to have it where like enemies could like roam from like one room to another in a procedurally generated like level where it's like like we actually don't know where these rooms are going to be technically, like
Yeah.
every time I test out the game, I don't know. Like it's a new game to me every time I test it out, essentially, right? And so at this point, yeah, enemies now, like so before I had the where the enemies were just cylinders, but now like you actually have these humanoid creepy things that walk, that now like sprint and attack, and it's like no matter what room you go to, it just like always chases down at you. So like that's like actually like that's working out really well, and that's something where I'm like pre-qualifications. I'm glad I figured that out, so that way I can actually get to this part of the game.
Yeah. Cool. When developing out these enemies, how are you gonna make them? Are they always gonna know where the player is, or are you gonna do some kind of like vision based aggression?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it will depend on the enemy. Oh, that's it's a good question. It depends, right? But I could say for this enemy, so the one of the challenges that I actually did foresee is like I want to make sure that so basically what happens is like these enemies when they're walking around, there's like a huge like sphere trigger that is like X radius like around them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you enter that sphere, that enemy will will get notified that you're like nearby kind of thing, right?
Okay.
But the thing is like that sphere collider thing goes through walls as well. So
Yeah.
technically, the enemy like you could be divided by a wall, and the enemy will like kind of like sense that you're there, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually have to do like another check where the enemy has to do a raycast, and if it like sees the wall first before seeing you, then it will just like it won't confirm that you're the target, right? It'll just be like, okay, I sense you, but I actually don't know where you are, so I'm gonna ignore you, kind of thing for that time
Okay.
being. And so yeah, like in that case, it's just one of those technical things where it's like I guess it's technically like vision based in a way. And it's like, but it doesn't have to be that way. It could be like, okay, maybe it's not vision based, but it's like audio based, or more like it's literally just the same thing, except it will just know you're there because
Yeah.
you've like walked into this collider thing, right?
Hmm.
And then that kind of opens up the abilities stuff like that. So like right now, I have like two abilities: the walking and the, walk speed plus increase, and then the health increase. And walk
Yeah.
speed thing doesn't really do anything right now, but I could have it where like if you're sprinting, the enemy will just know where you are automatically. But if you're walking, like it won't sense you because
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it could be like a blind thing and it's just tracking for like
The
for
sound.
audio for the
Yeah.
sound kind of thing, right? So all things to like, these are all things that I can, all these like different levers, different parameters that I
Hmm.
can play around with. So it's all about just building up the system that will allow for all these different parameters to like actually affect things. And so it's like, in some ways, I am actually just working on the system for the most part. But um, yeah, and then it's just getting the content in there. Essentially, that's like the actual tricky part.
Yeah. So what's your like timeline of things like after this demo? Are you gonna be working on trying to get more enemies in there, different types of enemies? Are you gonna be more working on like personal abilities, or do you have something else you're thinking of like focusing on? Or yeah, you know,
I think
all maybe all of the above.
I think at this point, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I think I will have to sit down and really think about like what the next like steps are.
Hmm.
Obviously, this game is like not like complete or anything like that anytime soon. So I think it's trying to figure out like what is like the highest priority kind of thing, right? Which is really just about like, okay, what's the best bang for buck when it comes to finding like the cricket, like trying to deliver the quickest amount of fun,
Yeah.
right? I think at that point, I think exploring around through the level, I think it's going to be like the biggest bang. Where like if it's not fun to explore around the level, then
Hmm.
like even if the boss fight is like fun, like it just might be, if you have to like dredge through the shit kind of thing, right, to
Yeah.
get to the fun stuff, like people are not gonna like that. Like people are not
Yeah.
gonna unless the payoff has to be like incredibly worth it. And I don't like right now where everything's still like a work in progress. Like
Yeah.
it's like the payoff is definitely like not there quite yet.
Gotcha.
So um yeah, so I think like that is like definitely what I would like lean towards. And I'll say I don't know, Stevie, I don't know if you've heard of the Blueprints. It's a new game that just came out recently, and it is a game where you actually do like build out. It's kind of like Betrayal of Haunted Hill, where when you walk into this mansion, as you go open up a door, you get to choose like which room you you draft and you walk into kind of thing.
Hmm.
So you get to like basically build up your own house. And so that game is like more like puzzle based, and which like the puzzles that you get exposed to depends on what rooms you actually build.
Yeah.
And actually, like, so it's one of those things where it's like it's great in the beginning because you don't yeah, every room is like basically new to you, which means all the puzzles are new to you. But the more that you explore, the more like puzzles you've already been exposed to, and the more like, okay, like I want to solve this specific puzzle, but it's blocked because of RNG. It's like you might actually just not get the ability to actually even build that room that you need to either
Mm.
solve the
Okay.
puzzle or just like interface with the puzzle. And so that's, I like, so I'm like kind of like looking to blueprints a little bit when it comes to seeing like what kind of rooms I should add to my game, and like what and how to avoid some of those mistakes on the art, like having these puzzles be based off of RNG, right? Like I want the RNG to be a fun factor and not frustrating that I feel like it can be in blueprints at the moment.
Gotcha.
I'll just say I do like blueprints a lot. Like I definitely like, it's just at night before I go to bed, sometimes I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's just build out a what. Like, let's just do one run, see what kind of puzzles I get, and to see what I can, do with it at that point, right? Like,
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be like a complete this game kind of thing, right? It's could just be exploring around for fun. And that's the thing. I want to be able to like explore through the spaceship and have fun with that.
Yeah.
And I think adding in this anime actually kind of does that a little bit because it does like make it where like even play testing through the game, like I have to kind of like dodge the enemies in order to like pick up different guns and stuff like that, and need to do that before the enemies like turn around and like start chasing me, right?
Yeah.
Because they do like kill you pretty quickly if they team up on you.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay, well, yeah, sounds like you made a lot of progress today. Got a lot of stuff on your plate still. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with the game before you do this demo? Or anything?
I don't think so. I feel like I know I talked about earlier about like, hey, you know what? Let's do like a 20-minute podcast rather than 30-minute one.
Yeah.
What's our you know,
I think we're in like the mid-20s right now.
mid-20s?
25.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, awesome. Yeah, this sounds like a probably like a good time to just like.
We have to keep viewer retention, Joshua. We have to cut off right now.
Well, it's like I don't want to like keep up. So I will just say, I can do the sign off and then we can also continue talking afterwards if we want to, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll do the sign off here. Thank you everybody for staying tuned to this thing. Like and subscribe to the YouTube. We'll be I like doing this podcast thing, so I definitely want to continue doing this. And I'll say, itch.io. So there'll be a link to on both the Twitch and the YouTube for links to my game. You should also join the Discord too if you want to. If you're interested in building out the future of this game, adding in your feedback. I'm open to feedback. I love feedback. Feedback is a gift. And I'm interested to see like how other people enjoy this game. And so join the Discord, and it's always a fun time in there. And that's the quickest way to get the most up to date updates for this game. All right, and so with that, we'll see you all next week.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you, everybody. All right, podcast over. All right, cool. So that was
podcast over. Yippee!
Yippee!